founder of Urbansize, a furniture company that designs and produces furniture for small living spaces and homes. During the episode, Sallie reveals the key pieces of furniture needed to create a clear and clutter-free home, how to use neutral colours to create a space that feels clean, fresh and modern, and how to add a level of refinement and sophistication to a room by layering tones. Sallie also provides business advice to entrepreneurs and business professionals by explaining how to create and sustain brand recognition, how to act as an ecologically and ethically responsible business, and how to navigate and avoid commercial risks and challenges. Sallie also provides exceptional advice on how to maintain good health and well-being as an entrepreneur who is always and forever on the clock. So without further ado, this is the story of Sallie King. It's wonderful to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I thought that we could start off by, for the listeners who aren't so familiar with Urbansize, would you mind explaining what exactly it is?
Yeah, of course. So Urbansize is an online furniture retailer specialising in furniture for small spaces. So people who live in like small apartments, a lot of our customers are in London or New York where you've got a limited space. So we design furniture to really fit into those little nooks and crannies. But it also works well for people that live in larger houses because I think there's always that awkward space for people. So just really trying to find solutions to people's small space woes.
So I understand that before launching Urbansize, you qualified as a lawyer, and you also come from a family of Devon-based furniture makers. So I was really interested to know, why did you launch Urbansize when you did? What made you qualify as a lawyer first of all, and then decide, oh, actually no, I want to kind of like follow in my family's footsteps and launch a furniture brand?
I think it was definitely like two elements to it. There was a push and a pull. So I qualified as a lawyer because I always wanted to become a lawyer. I think I came from that era where it was like Elle Woods and Ally McBeal, and I had this whole vision of what it was going to be like. And I loved law school and I loved the first couple of years. But then when I kind of settled into it, I realized that it just wasn't a career for me. Like it just didn't suit me to just always be sat at a desk for 8 hours a day. It's very hierarchical. It's very particular kind of career. And I just became quite unhappy in my day-to-day life. So I guess I was kind of starting to look outside of that for something else that I could do at that time. And it got to the point where I'd reached that level of frustration where I was like, okay, I'm finally going to do something about it. You know how they say you can't, if you're kind of mildly unhappy, you probably won't do anything about it. But I really reached that point where I was like, no, this is a tipping point for me. And simultaneously, I'd moved into a really small flat in Greenwich, which wasn't particularly cheap, but London, it was like pretty expensive and teeny tiny. And I was trying to furnish it. I've always been interested in interior design. So I was trying to furnish it in like a stylish way, and I just couldn't find any furniture at all that was for smaller spaces apart from IKEA, which is great, but just wanted something a little bit more unique. And one of the particular problems I had is that I had a bed in an alcove that had absolutely no space each side, so I just could not fit a bedside table there. And it used to really frustrate me because I always get back into bed in the morning with a cup of tea. And there was nowhere for me to put my cup of tea, which I know is not the world's worst problem in the world, but I was just trying to think of little ideas to come up with that. So to start with, I did a little shelf. And I was like, this isn't really enough. I need some storage. In a small space, you're always looking for somewhere to put all your bits and bobs. So I just started modifying this design. I came up with a drawer and then the little shelf underneath, just so I had something for everything, somewhere to store stuff, somewhere for my book, and somewhere for my cup of tea on the top. And then I just took a picture of what I'd done and put that product onto Etsy, and just had such a good response to it that I was like, oh, this might be something worth exploring.
That's awesome. Do you know what? I can really kind of like resonate with having a small space and not having anywhere to put anything. So I'm currently my bedroom it fits comfortably, I suppose, a nice small double, but and there's like a little bit of a walking space around the side, so I can have two bedside tables. But what frustrates me is that those sides get not cluttered, but you can. I had my alarm clock on there and a book, and I would kind of like throw some junky stuff in the drawer. And there's no place to have any like decorative things. Like I want to have a candle and I want to have flowers. So the floating shelves that you do are kind of like perfect for that. It's also really frustrating trying to keep the like smaller spaces clutter free and clear so you can easily tidy. Um, so another thing that frustrates me is having to move furniture around when I'm hoovering, especially in a small space, because it's like you turn one way and you knock your arm up against the wall. It's really stressful.
I think that was one. So that's what the 2 points there was. One is like when I design furniture, always try and build in an element of storage because that is just such a problem in a small space. So it's all well and good having like a shelf or whatever next to you, but if you haven't got anywhere to put your bits, they're going to end up on the floor because that's your only option. And the other thing is like one of our kind of key design features is a lot of wall hung furniture because twofold. One, the point you made about hoovering, which is just so frustrating when you've got a small space, you just end up with it dusty and cluttered. But also, the more of a floor space that you can see in a room, it tricks the eye into making it seem bigger. Whereas if you've got furniture all the way down to the floor, you see less of the room and then it just seems even smaller. So that's definitely like a key tip for a small space is just try and put everything that you can on the wall.
Yeah. So what are the key pieces of urban size furniture that people should invest in to have like a clear and clutter free home?
Well, I think as a general point, there's a few things that you can look out for when you're shopping for furniture for a small space. One of them being wall hung items, which can really help you free up that valuable square footage on the floor and give you like that sense of space in a room. The second one I would say is look for furniture with a minimalist design because if you end up with something quite fussy, the room can end up feeling a little bit overwhelmed. So Scandi and minimalist design works really well in a small space. And then the other thing is just multifunctional furniture that's got some element of storage in it. You just always want to have everything that you can that can have storage in, just try to find something with that as well. So I think in terms of the urban size pieces that work really well for that is in the bedroom, the floating bedside table. That was my first design, is still the best seller today. People absolutely love them and they just really work because you have got the drawer for all your like there's always bits and bobs that you have by your bedside, isn't it? Like your night cream and all your cables for your things that you're charging. And you've got your shelf for your book. There's just about enough room on the top for your tea and your lamp and your alarm clock. And then that's perfect. You kind of got everything that you need for a bedroom. And then for me, like in a bedroom, I prefer to have like the biggest amount of space taken by the bed. So say you've got a fairly small space, you can fit a king size in and then just have smaller bed size next to it. I think that just works really well.
What about kind of like for the living room?
So for the living room, again, I would keep all the key pieces really big. So get the biggest sofa that you possibly can, because that's what you're doing in that room. That's what's going to really make the difference and make it cozy. And then add your accent pieces around it. So whether it's like a slightly smaller coffee table or like smaller side tables for your lamps. And again, like even with your lamps, you can have those wall hung now. You don't even need to get the ones that are wired in. You can have the ones that are just can clip on. So there's loads of different options in that respect.
Would you only advise having neutral tones then? What about a pop of colour here and there?
No, I think to be honest, like whatever people feel comfortable with in their own home, I feel like there shouldn't be like these hard and fast rules about small spaces. And the other thing to consider is what that room's being used for. For example, if you've got a small living room that's really dark, it hardly gets any daylight, and you're there mostly in the evening, just lean into it, like make it really cozy, paint it darker, do some like patterns, because at the end of the day, you're going to be putting lamps on, you're going to be getting cozy in there, and you can create that kind of cave like vibe, you know? And painting like a room like that white isn't necessarily going to make it feel any bigger. It might just make it feel a little bit cold if you're not getting any light in there. But then if there's something like a bedroom, you tend to want more of a neutral vibe because you just want like that calm and space, and then it can be quite nice. And you can kind of mix different neutral tones in terms of your woodwork and your walls so that it's not just a flat colour. So it can work quite nicely to do a slightly darker tone on your woodwork and a lighter one on the walls. just to kind of give a balance to that neutral palette, because otherwise it can end up looking a bit flat.
You also do quite a lot of curved edge furniture. So, what's the benefit of having curved edge furniture?
That was actually new last year, and that was that I got really inspired when I went to the Milan Furniture Show early last year. There was so much curved architecture, so that in sort of curved archways, it was just incredible. I just really wanted to bring that back into small space furniture, because in general, I mean, I don't know if you saw that kind of viral sofa that everybody had that was curved. It was about 5 grand. I think it was really expensive, but it was beautiful. But things like that don't really work in a small space because they're not functional. They take up so much space that isn't used. So curved furniture, I'd say the benefit is generally aesthetic because it just looks beautiful. So when I was trying to design something for small space, like the challenge was to make sure we got enough storage in it, because quite often get a bit of wastage at the end. But once we'd designed it and shot it and everything was looking good in terms of storage, it actually adds in a small space a really nice sense of movement. And again, it kind of draws your eye around the room a little bit. So it does kind of add to that flow in a room. So they do actually work really well in a small space if you choose the right pieces.
What I liked about the curved edge pieces that you guys do is that it gives the impression that it doesn't take up that much room, because essentially it's not, and just by taking off the corners you do get that couple of inches extra room.
Yeah.
The taking off the corners is apparently meant to be more, I don't know if peaceful is the right word, but less
No, but it just adds softness to the room. You're absolutely right, because it just gives an airiness around it. Because what you quite often want to do, it's the same sort of idea as the wall hung furniture. You just want to add as much space around furniture as you can. And tips like trying to, there's a temptation in a small space to like push all the furniture up against the room, but the wall, and that can make it look really cramped. If you just bring it forward a couple of inches, again, just adds that bit of airiness and lightness to the room.
No filter. So there's a quote by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, and he says that you can have the best product in the world, but if nobody knows about it, what good is it? Um, and Urbansize has been featured in Sunday Times, Stylist Magazine, Grand Designs, Good Home Magazine, Refinery 29. I mean, I could go on. So I was really interested to know, how did you create this like really great brand recognition, and what do you do to sustain it?
Yeah, I think that quote's from Shoe Dog, isn't
Yeah.
it? I love that one. Um, so I think it's just constantly trying to make sure that you are being seen on platforms outside of your own. So we tried lots of different things, and it's a case of not just focusing on one area. So influencers obviously works really well. Our customers are one of the biggest source, because not only do people share stuff on their own social media, which we'll then reshare, but just in terms of word of mouth and reviews, because reviews really help on Google, they really help on your own site, and just builds that trust and confidence with a customer. And then the other thing is the PR that you mentioned, that always works really well. And even if it doesn't bring in a huge amount of sales, which sometimes print PR doesn't anymore, it's so valuable in terms of trust and confidence with the consumer. And that just helps build up that brand reliability, that brand recognition. And I don't know if you've heard this quote as well, that a customer has to see you at 8 different touch points before they buy from you. So just making sure that you've been, someone might have seen you on Pinterest, and then in a magazine, and then they see you on another influencer's feed, and just constantly trying to be front of mind for a customer. And like you say, like keeping that going is a constant job, because you can't just stop. You can't be like, well, I was in Stylist 3 years ago. Like, it's a constant, you have to always be looking for opportunity. And for example, now podcasts is such a good way to get recognition, trying to get like a founder kind of origin story out there so people understand where you come from, the values, and just trying to convey that story to people so they understand and trust and like you.
Yeah, absolutely. So those 8 different, was it touch points or trust
Yeah, touch points.
touch
Yeah.
points? You know, it could be called trust points because, as you were saying, it's about building that trust and knowing that you're a reputable brand, and yet you're genuine in, like, your offering is genuine. You're not just pushing out, products that don't have that kind of like in-depth R&I stage, and it's going to break after a couple of weeks or months or whatever. So yeah, I think that what you're doing is fantastic, and you're clearly killing all those 8 different touch points.
I think that's really difficult when you've got a product that's at quite a high price point and you're online only, because like you say, it's difficult. If you see something online and it's sort of £300-400, there is a hesitation if you haven't heard of that company. So it is really important to build up that trust. And it's almost impossible to get anywhere without it. And like the other thing is like the consistently delivering really good product and really good service. That's the other element of it, because without that, then you're not going to get any of the PR or the good customer reviews.
But you mentioned just being online. Would you ever consider like opening a showroom or something like that, or do you think that those kind of times have gone now?
No, I don't. I think a bricks and mortar store probably is more challenging at the moment. But I've spent a lot of time last year trying to find a space for us to do pop-up. I really, really want to do that because our furniture is so tactile and like it's such high quality, and it's even with photos, it's hard to get that across online. Would love to have a space where people could come and look at it. And I came to the conclusion at the end of last year that what we really need is like a collective of like home brands where like 4 or 5 of us can come together and kind of create an experience for customers. To say like a lighting brand or like a rug brand, and we all just have one pop-up shop, because then I think what people are looking for now when they go to retail is an experience. People aren't just going to the shop, they want to do like workshops or just it be really immersive.
How does a person go about creating a furniture company that strives to be ecologically and ethically responsible, just like Urbansize?
I think the only way you can do it is if it's a personal value, because it's really difficult as a small brand to make sure that you're sourcing everything from an ethical and from a sustainable place. Like even in terms of like last year when we were trying to switch all of our packaging to eco packaging, we had such a difficult time in trying to persuade our suppliers that that was something that needed to happen. And as a small brand, we don't have the kind of sway that a bigger brand would have. And you would think that that was something really simple, but it's something that requires a lot of time and also extra finance. And now customers expect that. They don't want to pay extra for a sustainable brand. They just want that as part of a small brand. So it's not even something that can be passed on cost wise. So do you think the only way to do it is to have that as a personal value and really want to have that as part of your brand? Because it is hard work and it's really difficult.
How do you know that consumers don't want to pay extra for it? They just expect it.
I think there's been a siege. I think about 3 or 4 years ago, it was more unusual for small brands and even bigger brands actually to have like eco packaging to say where all their products are coming from, to show like a reliable supplier chain. And at that time, I think customers would pay more for it. But now, where everybody's doing it, it's not an added value. So it's just part of what you have to provide. And if you don't do it, I think it's definitely kind of, a point off of your also like I think as a small brand, like customers do have a higher expectation of you. There's a reason why people go to small brands. They want to have that personal experience. They want someone to care about the products, where they come from, how they've made them, because otherwise they could just go to Zara or whatever, couldn't they? So
Absolutely. It must be harder, I imagine, for the smaller brands to be able to juggle all of that. Um, yeah, so I really kind of like take my hat off to you.
well, I think as well, like with a lot of I know that a lot of smaller brands sometimes they struggle with trying to keep in contact with their suppliers. Let's say if you're using a supplier in China or the Far East, like the trying to travel there to, actually check on what they're doing and make sure they're doing everything that they say they're going to do is much more challenging, especially as a small brand. So the fact that we're in Europe just makes it easier to be in constant contact with them. If something's gone wrong, like just pop over and have a face to face. It just makes all the difference.
Kind of links with the trust element, I suppose, in a way. Being able to rely on your suppliers to know that they're doing a good job and an honest job, and having that close contact with them, so you can, you know, have just complete openness and transparency.
Yeah, I really try and convey that on our social media, because whenever I go to our suppliers, I share it online and show like everything that's being made. Did a little video on where all the wood comes from, just trying to show everything from the very start, because everything wood wise is sourced from within a couple of miles of where it's made. And yeah, I think it's really, really important for, like you say, the trust factor.
Yeah, that's really nice that you share that, because now if I was to have like, I don't know, a coffee table or a bedside table from Urbansize, not only is it a nice piece of furniture to look at, but you can also tell a story about it as well. So it's a great kind of like conversational piece. What is the biggest challenge that you have been faced with as a business owner, and how did you overcome this challenge?
I think it was the well, I think it was like the dual aspects of Brexit and COVID kind of happening at the same time. That was really overwhelming, because at that time, about 30% of our sales were going to the EU via Etsy. And I mean, it was absolute chaos for this first 6 months. We were sending things out to Germany that were getting held at a warehouse for 4 months, which obviously customers are not happy about, because they paid for those goods, and then we'd done all the custom stuff that we're supposed to do, but Germany, none of the countries seemed to know what they were supposed to do with the documents once they'd arrived. So that was a really difficult time, and that was the time we started getting a few bad reviews, because obviously customers are, getting really impatient, and that was really hard to deal with, because it felt like out of our hands. And at the same time, I guess with COVID, there was like a bit of a supply issue as well, because a lot of places had to stop working. They had loads of workers that were self-isolating. So it was a really difficult time. And also demand was really high, which was great, because everyone was at home like ordering furniture. But then you were like, oh no, I actually can't get the furniture because everyone's self-isolating. It was a really hard time. It was really hard.
It does sound really tricky. Yeah, but the Brexit thing does sound um, particularly hard on small businesses. There was a guest on the show a couple of weeks ago, the founder of a company called the Perfect Planner Company. She does diaries, and she was sending diaries to Monique, her name is, sending diaries to different parts of Europe, and the diaries were just being stopped. They were getting held for, as your pieces of furniture were, weeks and weeks and sometimes months, and that's not great if it's a year to year diary. You know, you'd get your diary and you know it's already April, but they were getting really damaged as well, and yeah, it was a really hard time. So it does sound tough and a difficult one to get through. I'm just wondering, did your previous career as a lawyer help you with any kind of like issues with? I'm just thinking like with paperwork or anything like that. Um, yeah, have your previous career helped with any skills setting up the business or overcoming these challenges?
I sometimes think I get a bit over involved in legal aspects of the business that perhaps other people don't really focus on. Like, I'm really tight with all the contracts that we have with our suppliers and different people, because I just have seen it all go wrong, I suppose. Like when I first started proposing like certain contracts to suppliers, they seemed really shocked, a lot of them, that I was even suggesting we have one in the first place. So yeah, definitely. I think you know. Um, oh no. So I think it is really helpful, especially when you run into problems, legal issues, insurance, that kind of thing. Yeah, I definitely say it helps a little bit. The other thing I think it helps with is just a work ethic, because as you probably know, you have to bill all your hours in 6 minute units. So I'm always really conscious of productivity and what I'm doing with my day. So I time block, and it's, yeah, pretty nerdy about my productivity in the day.
I really like that. I mean, I like putting the Pomodoro timer on because then I know exactly It's honestly, it's a game changer. I didn't like it first of all, but after a couple of goes, it really kind of like made me focus, and I got to the end of the day feeling such a sense of accomplishment because I knew exactly where all of my time went, and I to be honest, I might be biased because I'm going to be training to be a solicitor soon, but I like getting involved in all aspects of a business and making sure there's like a watertight contract because it's part of the business at the end of the day. So I think that, as a founder and CEO, if you don't know the ins and outs of the contract and know exactly what you want to negotiate, you are kind of like leaving yourself open for disputes at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. You just leave yourself with no recourse if something goes wrong.
No filter. So, how do you maintain your health and general well-being as an entrepreneur who is always on the clock?
It really ebbs and flows, because sometimes you're just out of routine. So you might be doing, a site visit or visiting suppliers or a trade show or just have a crazy week with a photo shoot, and then everything just kind of goes out the window, really. So I think sometimes there just isn't such a thing as balance for me. But when I am at home in my routine, I'm really strict. So I will work out every day in the morning as soon as I drop the kids off, just eat really healthily and just try and make time for, wellness things like massages, so that when you are in a routine, like properly in a routine, so that when it's offset by those crazy times, you can come back to it. But I think the key is like not getting stressed when you fall out of it, because it's just going to happen. I'm just not one of those people that's going to take my resistance bands to a hotel room and do them whilst I'm there. But it's nice to know you're going to come back to it when you're home.
So, what's your top tip for being a successful entrepreneur?
Surround yourself with people that can do something better than you. I think really early on, as soon as things started to be successful and sales started to increase, I did outsource a lot of things that just were not my forte. And I'm just so glad that I did, because it's just what helped me grow. So, for example, the PR, initially, I did a lot of things myself, tried to make outreach, which is like, you can get a certain amount of the way, but then I hired someone to do PR and she's absolutely brilliant. And I hired someone to do social media that's much better at creating content than me. And I just think if you can, as soon as you can, obviously, as soon as it makes sense budget wise, it just elevates your brand to that next level if you've got people around you that can do things better than you can.
I think that's an incredible tip. Thank you for sharing that. Um, yeah, I think that by outsourcing, as you were saying, it gives you time to channel, what you're an expert in. So, if you're too busy trying to do these other things, yeah, you're taking away what you're good at and what you enjoy doing.
I think that's the complaint of a lot of founders as well. It's like they start doing a business of something they love and have a passion for, and then really quickly they end up not doing that at all and being really dragged down in the daily, the kind of like daily grind of things. And I think if you can strategically outsource those things, then you can get back to doing what do they call it, like your zone of genius is, so that you can be the one driving the brand and doing what it is that you're actually good at.
So, Sally, where can people buy and follow Urbansize?
We're at urbansize.co.uk, and on Instagram we're urbansize_home, and on Facebook and TikTok too now.
Awesome. Well, I will put all of those links in the show notes of this episode so people can check out all the Urbansize furniture and, yeah, follow you on all the socials as well. I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about Urbansize and, just explaining how to have a clutter-free and clear home and an easy way to live.
Oh, I loved it. Thanks for having me.